Good morning. So I have some questions today, both about what brings you to IEs, but also about your previous career life. And so my first question was, can you give us some indication about how you ended up being the IE Dean of Global and Public Affairs?
Thank you, Morgan. Great to be here, and thanks for the question. It sort of happened by chance, I have to say, because I was working with my predecessor, with Manuel Muñiz, as his senior advisor. Mm-hmm. We were trying to design some of the changes in programs that the school was starting to produce. And all of a sudden, Manuel was called to become Secretary of State in the new government of Spain. And the authorities of the IE felt that since I was working so close with the school and there were so many unfinished business where I was involved, they offered me this opportunity. So all of a sudden, I was not a bypasser on the school. I was the dean of the school, which is really thrilling. It's a unique opportunity to be close to young people and to somehow see the impact of what you design in transforming the views of young people like you.
Okay, thank you. In one of the classes of a Master in International Relations, we had Global Governance and International Organization with Professor Kivinger. And she told us that you participate and presided over the 11th WTO Ministerial Conference in Buenos Aires. And I wanted to have your thoughts on this, but also in general on the Doha rounds and why, according to you, it didn't work as it was supposed to be.
Well, that question could require a long answer, but let me try to be succinct. I think the Doha round was decided at a moment of where there was a need to come together by the many governments after 9/11. It was a unique moment where there was a need for hope, and that inspired the notion of a new agenda on trade, and a new agenda on trade that was fully associated to development. I think that was an over-optimistic perspective, so there were promises made that were going to be very hard to deliver on, even if the positive mood remained. Okay. I think trade is a key element of development, but it's not the enabler of development. And I think that concept is what really made a difference moving forward, because all of a sudden there was this expectation, particularly by the developing world, that this enabler will make the difference, and there was not opportunity to deliver. And as you started to dwell into the nitty-gritty of the agenda, many issues started to divide, not only developed versus development, but also between countries, priorities in the agenda. And unfortunately, that is what has created a divide that, in my view, is very hard to overcome.
Okay, thank you. And about the question of human rights, mostly like women's rights, as we say, but the Beijing Declaration said it was human rights. I wanted to go more on the impact of crisis in general. It can be military, but also sanitary crisis. And it tends to affect more women, as we said previously. And I was wondering what we can do as part of humanitarian aid, but also general aid, to include more this notion of impact on gender. Because most of the time, and as you said before, we do not consider enough the problem that it is affecting most women. And so that we need to take them into the discussion so that we can have a better solution.
Well, there are many aspects to that question, Morgan. The first one is that it is fundamental to have data that distinguishes between women and men. Because only by measuring properly, you can intervene, you can make decisions on interventions that have a differentiated impact. So the first thing I will say, we need information that is gender differentiated. Okay. It will look like it's a very basic appeal when you're talking about something that is so substantive, but without data, it's hard to make the case and to really create the policies and design the policies that are really taking into account this differentiation. I will also argue that we have to make all our interventions and decide on our policies with the gender perspective. You know, once you have the data, that has to be the driver. And let me give you an example. When I work in the World Food Program, we discovered that when women were the ones who received the food from World Food Program, the loss of food was much smaller. Okay. Why was this the case? Well, women will not give food away just to buy tobacco or to buy sex, which was something that happened often among men. Women eventually will enrich the basic food basket by exchanging certain types of food which were not in the food basket, so just trying to enrich the food basket, or to buy soap to make their kids wash their hands. Yes. So there is a gender perspective, particularly in crisis moments, in crisis places, that makes a significant difference if it is put at the forefront. So let's have the data, let's have the decision to make interventions, to design policies that have a gender perspective, and let's measure. Let's make sure we measure, because unless we measure progress, we'll never be able to really find out whether we have made an impact.
As part of the Master in International Relations, and mostly one of the class with Oscar Martinez, I wrote my final paper on women's educations, and I also found some data proving that women had a better gestion of food, but also of investment, because when they have a revenue, they invest it into their children, the education of the children, but also like their well-being. And so because of that, the children suffer less from malnutrition, are more educated, and then like it's elevated the country as a whole. And I found it really, really interesting. And related to that, we have seen that during the COVID, leaderships where it was with more women were like, at least seems to be more efficient than situation of leadership with men. So does it go with what you were saying before, that women will have more empathy and will more consider what are the point of view of others, and so that's why they are able to make better decisions?
Well, no doubt about it. The fact that women tend to see things in parallel, you know, somehow men are sequential in their analysis. They might go deeper, but they won't go one after the next. Women tend to see 5 things in parallel and connect them. Okay. And often you don't know why the connection is there, but we make those connections. That makes a difference in decision process. That's why I always say that we need to have at the most senior level of companies, of governments, of institutions at large, a representation of society, meaning women at 50%, because that's the only way to take decisions that really not only fully represent the views of society, but also have a way of creating those decisions, making those decisions that have all those considerations. And I think that's what made the difference in New Zealand with the Prime Minister of New Zealand, or Chancellor Merkel, or many other women in the world. This has proven, as difficult as it is, the management of a pandemic, they have taken decisions in a much more nuanced manner that has proven to be successful.
Okay, thank you very much. And my last question is, what future do you see for the IE School of Global and Public Affairs?
A great future. What else can I say? No, I really think it's IE is an institution that started as a business school, but has now evolved to be a university with 5 schools, and we are now in the ethos of what IE is. It's an institution at large that wants to have a perspective that is much broader than just business, being business so important. And we bring the view of the global world, we bring the view of how policy has impact on lives every day. We provide a perspective that is enriching and is much more, and is much broader. And I think that is here to stay, and it's going to go farther, because we are going to enlarge our portfolio, we are going to have more programs, and we are going to associate ourselves. That is the other thing that is important for us, to partner with important institutions like the UN, OECD, OAS, etc., that make a difference.
Okay, thank you very much for all your answers. They were really insightful, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks to you, Morgan, and happy Women's Day.
Happy Women's Day too.